All right, good morning, everyone. We're going to get started. Today is our last day of the April Mid-Atlantic Council meeting. We're going to start off with business session. We're going to jump right into committee reports. I saw Paul's name online, so Paul, I appreciate you sending the summary, and if you're ready, we're ready to get into this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted everything. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you sound good.
Okay, thank you very much. So this is the long-awaited summary of the SSC meeting, certainly one of the highlights of any council meeting. All the material you need is under tab 9. I'll go through the list of topics. Next slide, please. We had 4 major topics to talk about at our last meeting. We talked about black sea bass genetics, a review of the cooperative research program at the Northeast Fishery Science Center, and we had 2 ongoing projects, one which was some consideration of the ilex squid quota adjustments, and then a broad discussion about the potential consequences of less frequent assessment updates, a topic that you talked about yesterday. So next slide, please. Under the black sea bass genetics, this of course is a concern between the mid-Atlantic and the southern stocks. We've received some really nice, clear, lucid presentations by Richard Harrington and Tracy Smart from South Carolina on the recent work on and updates on black sea bass stock structure. To get cut to the chase, there were no changes in the location of the genetic shift between black sea bass in the mid-Atlantic and South Atlantic. That is at about 35 degrees north. There doesn't seem to be any evidence of a change in the gene flow between these stocks, that is the frequency with which they're interchanging. Importantly, one of the conclusions was that the constriction in the southern range of the stock is likely due to climate conditions rather than any kind of northward movement or introgression with the northern stock. There were some concerns about whether these conclusions had temporal stability. Well, what do we mean by that? Basically, the lack of strong year classes in the south could be a problem in terms of the strength of this conclusion, but overall, there was some fairly strong evidence and strong statistical evidence that there's no major shift of the southern stock into the north, and that the current condition of it could be a combination of both warmer temperatures and fisheries management and exploitation. Next slide, please. We also received a very nice overview of the cooperative research program by Dr. Anna Mercer. We noted that the program continues to provide critical information for stock assessments and supports high priority fishery management needs. We don't often use the word or adjective nimble in this regard for most government agencies, but we certainly appreciate it, or any organization that it has been responsive to both short-term and long-term needs. Short-term needs, address key scientific and management needs, such as a need for increased sampling efforts or a test of a gear type or things of that sort. One important, highlight there is that there are many new data collections methods that are being proposed and actually used in the field. And importantly for these types of initiatives is that the newly acquired data is integrated into the existing databases. So it really is taking the care to make sure that the that new information can be analyzed for the current purpose, but also analyzed for future researchers and so forth. So this is a very promising aspect of some of the work that they've been doing. They've also been doing some prototyping for potential long-term projects. And so these might be an alternative sampling design, such as a hook and line survey in wind energy areas and things of that nature. And then finally, we just wanted to highlight the recent contributions to the longfin squid research track assessment, which is scheduled for peer review in August. There have been many pieces of information, high frequency, by that I mean monthly or even finer scale information that is now used in the model in order to address many of the issues that are important for squid. Squid, of course, have short lifespans, oftentimes shorter than the interval between research surveys. So all of that kind of information is useful. The SSC expressed a couple concerns, one being the need for consideration of the representativeness of, say, things like the study fleet, in systems where you have, say, relatively light representation. There needs to be further work in terms of evaluating the representativeness. Are these vessels participating at indicative of the behavior of the whole? So that's always an issue of any kind of sampling design, and the SSC highlighted that. They also noted that the spatial scale of fisheries is an important part of the ongoing work, particularly in the study fleet. So there we're finding new insights in terms of not only the spatial scale of fishery, but importantly for models, the spatial scale and temporal scale of harvesting and fishing mortality. So next slide, please. An ongoing project that we initiated discussion on was the ILEX quota adjustment proposal. The council has asked us to take a look at the potential consequences of having a upward adjustment of the ILEX quota of 40,000 metric tons, or ABC of 40,000 metric tons in years of high abundance. And what would be transferred or added to that would be the current allocation under NAFO. So this generated a lot of discussion within the group for two reasons. One is this is not only a matter of degree, that is increasing fishing mortality, but it's also a matter of kind. And by that I mean it is looking at the difference in stock structure and things of that sort. So it starts to impinge, so to speak, on those considerations. So there are a number of things that were highlighted. First is that this will need to be a examination of trade-offs. Any increase in above the ABC, by definition, incorporates an increased risk of overfishing. So, but they need to be weighed in this context with respect to the economic benefits. And in particular, it will be useful or important to look at the historical data to see whether that increase in fishing level is important and significant in years when the fishery did close earlier, when there was evidence of very high abundance on the inshore zone. So that's where we'll get more of the details and be able to address the issue with respect to a difference in the overall or average condition versus a difference that might occur in a specific year. There was also some questions about the analyses of stock structure and some recommendations to update information that had been previously looked at in the research track related to presence of squid or ilex in not only the zone of the US EEZ, but also in Canada. So some of those things will need to be updated and reviewed for before the SSC would develop a final recommendation. And then finally, the whole business of how do you determine within a given year whether or not you are going to exceed the quota. At one level, it seems fairly straightforward and obvious, but it also is one that, in order to evaluate it, you'd probably want to take a look at some historical data and the frequency of data acquisition and timing and things of that sort. So the devil will be in the details on this one, but that shouldn't be too big of a hurdle. We did receive some public comments. Next slide, please. One is that the noted that the stock as a whole, and this was basically from the research track, was that it really doesn't move a whole lot north and south, but rather it's the more common direction is east and west on and off the shelf. There was some modeling done with a program known as VAST. It's an autoregressive spatial model, but the U.S. portion of the analysis really focused only on the U.S. Okay, so there are some other features that are important here. One of which is that there's a very high co-occurrence of catches with the U.S. and Canada. They seem to get them when we do, but the fishery has changed markedly since the exclusion of the foreign fleets, and it's really just a small dory type fishery. And then the commenter noted that changes in NAFO allocations would not be necessary per guidance from the regional office. And then we noted that that the primary biomass of ilex is offshore and really unavailable. There is some evidence of mixing between them from tagging studies, but the more important conclusion, and one that has come about primarily through work with the cooperative research program, is that there's a very strong oceanographic factor that drives the relative abundance. And so this will be new information that will be incorporated and considered by the SSC at some point. And like the data collection programs for that have been so beneficial for longfin squid, there's also a parallel study known as SQUISM, which is the data collection program for ilex squid. Next slide, please. Yesterday, you talked a lot about some of the implications of less frequent assessments and longer duration between management events. That also, of course, has a parallel world in terms of the assessment. So the reductions in staff at the center are expected to reduce the complexity and the frequency of future assessments. So we were anticipating simpler data analyses or simple data updates that will replace what previously had been model-based updates through the management track. We have a subgroup that's looking at this. The OFL-CV group kind of rolls off the tongue the overfishing limit, coefficient of variation, but this has been the subgroup that's been looking at some of these kind of operational concerns. It has made some progress, and we had a couple working papers to take a look at that. Next slide, please. So there are there we go. There are some considerations, the short-term approaches that rely on indices of abundance. For example, the iSmooth methodology, which is commonly used for Northeast New England Fishery Management Council stocks. And this approach essentially looks at the rate of change of a particular one or more indices and uses that as a basis for adjusting the ABC up or down in response to those observed changes. For longer term approaches, a variety of things known as management procedures could be used. These have more extensive simulation testing. And if you think of the process that the council went through to develop its risk policy, that was in fact an example of a management procedure. You have an operating model, you have an assessment which is based on that true state of nature, and then you implement different harvest policies. Here you add some control rules to say, okay, if quantity X is below level Y, then we do action Z. So it's that kind of sequence of logic. So the group will be making some final recommendations for consideration later this summer. But the idea will be primarily to not have the SSC be doing a lot of extra analyses, but rather relying heavily on work at the center. So which is part of our planning for our May meeting, which will include some consideration and work with the Science Center. It will be held in Woods Hole. Next slide, please. Under other business, importantly, I want to welcome our two newest members, Dr. Jennifer Bigman from the University of Delaware and Dr. Ming Sun from Virginia Institute of Marine Science. Thank you to the council for selecting these individuals, and we look forward to working with them over the coming years. The next meeting will be held in Woods Hole, where we have a 2-day meeting of the SSC, or a 1.5-day meeting, followed by a 1.5 days of work with the Science Center. So we're greatly looking forward to that activity and sort of the collaboration that will ensue from that. So with that, that's all for my report, and I certainly appreciate your time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, thank you, Paul. Much appreciated, and also for reminding us that we do have some new members that have accepted, and very exciting to have them on board. Any questions on the SSC report? I should look online too here. Michelle?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Paul, for the report. I guess, quick question. So will the meeting in Woods Hole with Science Center colleagues, will that also include some of the maybe discussion about, the last topic on, recommending ABCs based on the less comprehensive data, that work of the OFL CV subgroup? Will that be included there? That's my first question.
Yeah, that actually is probably the primary focus. We still haven't finalized an agenda, formal agenda, but I think the concept is that any organization diverges, or organizations diverge if they don't every now and again get together and meet. And so this one is basically an opportunity to make sure that we have kind of a common understanding of our objectives of both groups and the constraints of both groups, and hopefully we can get to a point where we do get some level of agreement on the types of information and the subsequent decision making that will be used.
Thanks for that. And then I guess my second question might be a little bit more of a Brandon Muffley question. And sorry to put Brandon on the spot, but I was just wondering if some of the work that's being conducted under one of the IRA projects, which is Project 6, the one that's evaluating data needs and management strategies to support climate-ready fisheries management, looking at different levels of data collection. I mean, Brandon, is there some possibility that the work of that project might support some of this ongoing work by the OFL-CV subgroup regarding data updates and things like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if it has some direct application to this, Michelle. That group, Lisa Kerr and the staff up there are, so that's going to evaluate how well the models perform under different data uncertainties, right? Looking at MRIP or the changes in port sampling and those things. And certainly, so it's going to look at a broader sort of range, just in terms of like what data uncertainties are and how that cascades through the assessment and to the science advice that we actually get and what the councils do, and how the different harvest control rules and risk policies may perform under different data uncertainties. So I don't think it'll get directly at the data update question specifically, just a broader sort of look at how uncertain data may cascade through the system.
Thank you, man. Not seeing any other hands around the table. I will ask if there's any member of the public that have questions on this SSC report. Not seeing any. Well, thank you, Paul, once again, and we look forward to hearing how the Woods Hole meeting goes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yep. Our next report will be the NTAP report. I believe Hannah, Hannah's on her way up to take care of that, so thank you.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Just a quick Northeast Trawl Advisory Panel or NTAP update from me. Might help if I turn it on. So the NTAP recently met on February 12th of this year. We met down in VIMS, so it was a good opportunity to be down in Virginia. We've also been holding our, I call them semi-regular scheduled NTAP working group meetings. This is continuation of what we started back in, I think August of 2024, planning rivets. Since December, the NTAP working group has transitioned to planning phase 2 of that effort. And remember, rivets is that regional industry-based trawl survey. So working with industry to do some bottom trawl work that would be complementary to the Bigelow. So our February 12th meeting, we had a good agenda, full day. We started off with some center and survey updates. Then we talked about rivets phase 1. We got a status update, plans for when it will hit the water and things like that. We also, the full NTAP received an update from the working group regarding that phase 2 planning. And then since we were down in VIMS, we got a demo of, since VIMS will be running phase 1 of rivets, we got a demo of the equipment that they'll be using on the water. So the electronic equipment to measure fish and things like that. So it was a cool opportunity for us to be down there and see that in person. During the meeting, as I mentioned, we got a Science Center update. I won't go into too much detail because John Hare always gives a great update from his staff, but just things we talked about at NTAP that got some traction. So We got an update about the fall 2025 survey. They completed 258 of the 377 stations. So although NTAP members were disappointed to hear this relatively low rate of completion, they applauded the Science Center because they were faced with a lot of challenges during the survey. We had the 43-day government shutdown. They ran into a boulder, I believe, an unmarked boulder that damaged the gear, so they had to go in for that. So they faced a lot of challenges, and a lot of people were out of the office and not working, so NTAP ultimately applauded them for their efforts. The Gulf of Maine Long Line Survey was a success. I believe they completed 100% of their stations. We also got an update on the Pisces. So if you may recall, the Pisces will be filling in or is filling in for the Bigelow for the spring 2026 survey. A recent update, they completed leg 1, and I believe they're underway for leg 2. Getting a nod from John Hare, thank you. We also got an update on the offshore wind survey mitigation program. So this is currently in review, internal review at the Science Center, and it includes final plans and cost. Just a reminder, this includes 19 surveys, both existing Science Center surveys as well as new surveys. And this was something that was peer reviewed by a joint New England and Mid-Atlantic SSC subgroup about a year and a half ago. We also got a NEMAP fall 2025 trawl survey update. All 3 of those trawl surveys were a success. There were a couple missed tows up in the Maine, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts surveys because of fixed gear and weather, but for the most part, the majority of all the sites were completed. Ribbits phase 1, so there's been a little shift in the timeline for this. So if you recall, we were hoping to hit the water last fall, but because of the government shutdown, it had to be delayed. So right now it is on track to sail from Hampton, Virginia later this month, and they'll start sampling on the 28th. That's of course weather dependent. Sampling site selections, there'll be about 22 tows in the Vineyard Wind area, 9 in the wind farm lanes, 9 close to the turbines, and then 4 along the outside of it. And then there will be 17 offshore tows that are evenly spread across the depth range from 30 to 150 fathoms. So we're not only testing if this gear is usable within the wind farm and close to those turbines, but also in those farther offshore sites that NEMAP gear doesn't normally tow in. As I mentioned, the working group is still planning phase 2 of Ribbits. We have these semi-regular scheduled meetings, and I say semi-regular because they're loosely every 3 to 4 weeks, but we've had to cancel a couple because of conflicts and stuff like that. But we're kind of making through our way for each topic. So we've had some discussion on survey design. Next week or in a couple weeks, we'll have a discussion about gear. And we're kind of splitting these. These are usually 2-hour meetings. Some are 4-hour meetings, but we're splitting them topic by topic, and we're discussing each topic initially to have that initial kind of talk through what are the options, and then we have an initial discussion, and then at a later meeting, their decision discussion. So you'll see 1 of 2 in that table on the right, meaning that's meeting 1 of 2 of that topic, and then later we have a second meeting where we actually make the decision. And just as a reminder, the goal of phase 2 for Ribbits is to inform the development of the full-scale survey with a focus on operational feasibility on multiple vessels. So we're hoping to at least do this work on 2 different vessels across a wider geographical area. So hopefully somewhere in the New England or Gulf of Maine area, as well as in the Mid-Atlantic. We also got an update about phase 2 funding. So it was $3 million was included in the congressional budget specific for phase 2 of Ribbits. at the NTAP meeting, the Science Center hadn't received the money yet. So right at this point, we're just continuing to do our planning so that once the Science Center does receive the money, we can hit the ground running. So we're hoping to peer review basically phase 2 and the outcomes of phase 1 with a joint, probably sub SSC of the 2 SSCs later this year. And then just for next steps, so April 13th will be that first gear discussion of the NTAP working group. Then May 15th, we'll have a decision meeting on survey design. And then May 28th is the gear decision meeting. We have multiple meetings after that, but those are just the most recent 3 in the next 2 months. We'll also have an NTAP orientation meeting later this month on the 23rd. This is a meeting where we just have new NTAP members come to just kind of talk about the background of NTAP, the purpose of the group, and what are some of the hot topics right now. And then we are planning for our next full NTAP meeting probably in July of this year, and it'll be most likely in New Bedford, Massachusetts. And with that, that's all I have. But big shout out to Science Center staff. Catherine Ford, she leads NTAP with me. Anna Mercer and Jason Morrison, they are the NTAP working group leads. So a lot of those discussions are attributed to their hard work, and then our co-chairs. So Bobby Brule is our council co-chair and Dan Salerno from the New England Council. And that concludes my presentation. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Hannah. Appreciate it. Any questions on the NTAP report? Seeing any around the table? Any questions from the public? No, Hannah, I think we're all good. Thank you so much. Oh, yeah. Jim Fletcher. Go ahead, Mr. Fletcher.
Will any electronic trawl ever be considered? The Europeans are using an electronic trawl. I've talked to Dr. Ford, and it's not very receptive. But if we want to know what's out there, why not use the latest technology, which is an electronic trawl? Thank you for your time.
Yep, thank you. I see John Hare has his hand up.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Mr. Fletcher. We did talk with the company that you put us in touch with regarding developing an electronic trawl in the US. And when we explained what we were doing, they didn't feel like that they could help us. And then the Europeans do use an electronic trawl. It's a beam trawl fishery, commercial fishery targeting flounders. And so it wouldn't catch the wide suite of species that we're collecting in the Northeast with the bottom trawl survey. So I think at this point, unless there's more information that becomes available to us, we sort of reached a dead end in terms of the electronic trawl idea. But if you have additional ideas or additional companies that would be interested in working with us, we're more than happy to listen and pursue those connections. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. And thanks again, Hannah. And I believe that takes us to the executive director's report. So I'll turn it over to Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. I know your enthusiasm for this report is only second to Paul's, but I'll do my best. Well, and also hopefully everyone had a good week here in New York. We haven't been to this hotel. I don't think we've ever been to this hotel, but hopefully you liked it. There's a number of items beyond the tab that I want to bring your attention to. I'm mindful of all the planes, trains, and automobiles that are in play this morning, so I'll do my best to go through these things. I don't want to go too quickly because there are a number of things that I really want you to react to. First, as typical for the tab, the first thing beyond the tab is the upcoming council meeting topics. You can look there and see what we have listed for June. We do have an addition to that list as a result of action that we took this week. That's that SCUP framework. You can also see that we're going to be dealing with golden tilefish specifications and some other things, including another SCUP issue, which is the GRAs. So it could be major SCUP discussions in Alexandria. That that hotel is conveniently located pretty close to the airport. It's easy to get to. One of the things that we're going to be doing at that meeting that's not listed here is having a reception. So as Joe indicated earlier in the week, this is our 50th year. April marks 50 years. So the council's been in operation for a while. We want to commemorate that, acknowledge that. We started at this meeting with some outreach products that hopefully you find useful. We're going to have this reception in Alexandria. Not a heavy duty reception, just something after the meeting on Wednesday. We're going to ask Penyo to show up and talk about NOAA fisheries and its interactions with the council. So hopefully he'll be able to make that. So plan on that. You can see what's going on in August as well. I'm not going to go over that list. As we go through the year, we are going to be talking about the 50th year again. In December, we're going to have another reception, a larger reception to end the year, and that's going to be in Annapolis. Next. These are the meeting schedule dates for 2028. Hard to believe, but we're talking about 2028. We don't have hotels lined up yet, but you can see the schedule there. That schedule will be the schedule for 28. We're not going to move any of those dates. Certainly, I think I've said this to you before, if anyone has any good ideas about hotels or locations, or you got buddies in the hotel industry, certainly let us know, and we'll see what we can do to accommodate that. Next item. These are council actions under development. It's a table that we included in the briefing book all the time. Basically give you an idea where we're at. You can see that a couple of those we've already taken action on, including the omnibus amendment and the rec tilefish reporting framework. We continue to work on the rec sector separation amendment as well as the gear marking framework. Next. Here's some council, the status on council actions. The ones that are highlighted there are changes to the document that you have in the briefing book, just because of the recent updates. You can see that, for example, the proposed rule for blue line tilefish was published on the 30th of March. And there's some other dates there as well. Looking at the table, I think one of the other things that we continue to be anxious about is that rec measure setting process framework. We talked about that this week a little bit. And I think with that, I'll move to the next slide, please. One of the things that that we have asked for and that we get in the briefing materials is an update on offshore wind. Julia provided that to us again this week in terms of just some of the major points that that she includes in the letter or in her memo to me. Vineyard Wind completed construction on March 13th. However, some of the work is still ongoing to finish powering it up. Two projects which are still under construction have begun to deliver power to the grid. That includes Revolution Wind off Rhode Island and Seaval, that project off of Virginia. There's a section in the memo that also talks about a wind project developer from France, Total Energies, signed an agreement with the Department of Interior to relinquish their leases. You can take a look at that if you hadn't heard about that. The details are in her memo. Orsted, the developer of several East Coast wind projects, is providing vouchers for training related to safe navigation within the wind farm areas. Again, you can find more information on that in the memo. In the memo, there's also some links that you can take a look at, click on to see what's going on with construction and maintenance activities for a number of other projects. I'm going to stop there because I went through that relatively quickly to see if there's any questions or comments before I move on. Okay, seeing none. Next. Also, one of the things that we get for every meeting now is a protected resources newsletter that Hayden puts together. A couple items in there related to sturgeon, just to mention. The newsletter mentions that the most recent stock assessment for sturgeon took place in 2017. It was updated in 2024. That 2024 update concluded that the coastwide Atlantic sturgeon population remained depleted relative to historic levels. ASMSC stock assessment subcommittee involved with sturgeon has begun work on the next benchmark assessment. It's scheduled for completion by the end of 2028. so we'll get that in 2028. There is also a note in there about the fact that in June of 2023, NOAA Fisheries informed the councils that incidental takes of sturgeon and gillnet fisheries had exceeded levels authorized under the 2021 biological opinion. As a result, the agency reinitiated consultation under the Endangered Species Act. A revised biological opinion has not yet been released. There's also several updates to right whales. In February of 26 this year, NOAA Fisheries withdrew its notice of intent for modifications to the Atlantic large whale take reduction plan, citing conflicting timelines under NEPA and the Consolidated Appropriations Act. However, the Atlantic large whale take reduction team still plans to meet this year to develop recommendations for modifying the plan. Last week, the team released upcoming meeting dates. These are not included in the memo. So if you're interested, there's a webinar scheduled for May 12th from 2 to 4 to provide a status update on right whales. Also, in-person deliberations on potential changes to the take reduction plans are tentatively scheduled for the week of November 30th this year. Last point that I want to make relative to her newsletter is that on March 4th, NOAA Fisheries published an advanced notice of proposed rulemaking seeking public input on potential revisions to the 2008 vessel speed rule. That rule requires most vessels 65 feet or longer to travel at 10 knots or less. That public comment period on that will run through June 2nd of 2026. Next item, or another item behind the tab, is the Inflation Reduction Act project status updates. Again, this is something that you see at every meeting. I don't have anything specifically to mention as a result of those updates. Michelle referenced one of the projects that's ongoing. Remember, there's 8 projects. You can click on a link and it'll take you to our website where we have the fact sheets on those particular projects. Next. We have a photo contest. So I think everyone around the table and out in virtual land is aware of our photo contest, but if you're not, we do have one that's ongoing. We extended the deadline to April 20th. In basically, how many have we received, Mary? Like 50, 60?
I think last time I looked, it was actually close to 100 submissions.
Good.
Oh.
So yeah, so we're up to 100. One of the things that we're thinking about, in addition to this here, in terms of displaying the photos on our webpage, is making or putting together a slideshow for that event in June, so everybody can take a look and see what kind of photos we got relative to the contest. So again, if you're interested, send us your photos and certainly let folks know that we are looking for photos. Next. So we have a joint blue line tilefish subcommittee. And I think everybody knows that. Just as a reminder, this council and the South Atlantic Council agreed to establish the joint subcommittee to address the jurisdictional allocation of blue lines north of Cape Hatteras. The goal of the subcommittee is to formalize jurisdictional allocation and establish a management process for setting and updating the allocation going forward. So we thought that, in fact, this would be something that we needed to do relatively quickly so that we could impact 2028. However, based on conversations that occurred at the South Atlantic Council meeting, that's not the case. And we're going to take a little bit more time, be more deliberative in terms of how we proceed. So you can take a look here in terms of the notes that Hayden has provided us, that the 2027-2029 blue line tilefish specifications will be set using the previous agreed upon framework data. And that's the CDAR data limiting toolkit, also the saddle data that supports that 70-30 split between the councils. Next. We have agreed that membership should include 3 council members and 1 SSC member from each council on this particular subcommittee. You can see there some details relative to the first meeting that's scheduled for May 1, the kickoff meeting, and then there will be a in-person meeting as well. And there's the goals and objectives. Next. This is an issue that came up at the last council meeting. Remember, there's an individual that was concerned, more than concerned. He was having a hard time trying to figure out how to get a permit for a larger boat. In the material provided behind the tab, there's a memo that staff put together for us, basically to let us see where they're at with that particular conversation. And also noting that the Mid-Atlantic Council and the New England Council staff are working with GARFO to evaluate the current baseline restrictions. Remember, this was an item that was included in our 2026 implementation plan. We will continue to proceed as we've discussed, see where that takes us, but certainly not a easy or short process. So this is going to be something that's going to be ongoing for a little while. And I'm going to stop there. Any questions or comments before I move on? Okay, next. So there's another issue regarding Executive Order 14276. Let me get to my notes here, make sure I say this correctly. So behind the tab is a letter that we submitted to NOAA, noting that we received these additional comments from them. We took a look at them at our February meeting and determined that no revisions to the recommendations of work plan that we had transmitted to NOAA Fisheries in September were warranted. So we didn't make any changes as a result of that additional information that we got. And I think I'll leave it at that. Next. Here's another issue that that we need to consider at this meeting, just in terms of, it's relatively simple and straightforward, but there's an issue with the timing of submission of annual measures for bluefish. So basically, the current regs require that the council submit fishing measures to the regional administrator by September 1. So that wouldn't be a problem, except that we have this new recreational management setting process that is likely to apply to bluefish beginning in 2028. So there's some details there, some details in the memo. GARFO is recommending that we remove the September 1 submission date from the regulations. This will not have, removing that date's not going to impact any of the other specifications or management measures that we include in those documents. So I don't think it's a big deal, but I need to ask you all whether or not you think it's a big deal. So if no one has any concerns, then we'll proceed and work with GARFO to make that happen. So now's your chance. Questions, comments, concerns? Yes, Joe.
Yeah, thanks. I guess I will start. No, I think it's very important to do it. I think it's odd that it's been kind of in a different place than the other three species. Deep down, I think every one of us, is, from state administrators to fishermen, wish that all of our regs were set earlier the previous year. But we know that the process is getting more and more complicated in order, hopefully, to also be more flexible. And so that's just kind of been pushing all the dates back. We've obviously seen that with CBAS this year. So I'm fully supportive. Other hands for Chris.
Seeing none, so we'll work with GARFO on that. I don't know, Mike, if you wanted to say anything relative to that. It's pretty, again, straightforward.
I think, yeah, I think you covered it, Chris.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to the next slide, Mary. So this is an interesting topic, and it's interesting because we've been dealing with it for a while, and it's kind of wonky and kind of weird, which makes it interesting. But we're finally getting somewhere with the Fish and Wildlife Service relative to this particular issue. And if you know what I'm talking about, you understand that it just involves this definition of shellfish, which seems very strange. But basically, the way that shellfish were defined in U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service regulations excluded squid and some other cephalopods. And that wouldn't be a big deal, except that it results in taxation, basically. So it results in squid folks having to pay money to basically export squid. We've expressed concerns, industry has expressed concerns, and basically what's happened is that we have now a proposed rule that aligns exactly with what we had recommended. So as a result of Mary's excellent letters, our interaction with a number of folks over a 6-year period, we're actually getting somewhere. So that's good. There's also, so the letter is behind the tab, basically supporting that proposed rule. There's also a letter from the New England Council that's posted as supplemental, also supporting that rule. Any questions about that or anything else at this point? Yes, Michelle.
I'm just curious, like in the online comment portal, if there were any, like for the proposed rule, if there's have there been any comments received in opposition to the rule change? There have been. Really? Interesting. Thanks.
Yep. Again, it's an interesting topic, and yeah, it's perplexing as to why anyone would, except that there's money involved and potentially some concerns related to, I don't know, endangered species or something. But anyway, yeah, it's interesting. Other questions or comments? James Fletcher.
How did U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service extend beyond the 12-mile limit of the United States? I did not think that Manguson carried the fish and wildlife beyond 12 miles. If you could you give us a brief history? Thank you, James Fletcher, United National Fishermen's Association.
Jim, I cannot. I don't know if anyone else can address that particular issue, but certainly we can look into it and provide some additional information when we have a chance. Mary?
So the Fish and Wildlife Service role here, as I understand it, is not really related to fisheries management at all. And it really only, the change that's being proposed here only pertains to the regulations governing the import and export of wildlife. So that's their role here. And it's been kind of a challenge for the industry who's trying to export squid and having to abide by different requirements that other fisheries are exempt from. So they can only export from certain ports and have to pay additional licensing and inspection fees and that sort of thing. But it doesn't really have any relevance offshore.
Thanks, Mary. Other comments or questions? Okay, seeing none. Next. So this is another interesting topic, and one that I'm bringing to your attention because Bonnie Brady brought it to our attention, and working with Jason indicated that basically it's something that should be of concern to the council. And this is in the tab, it's a letter from Garfo to the New England Council regarding southern windowpane flounder and ocean pout. And typically not species that we care about them, but not as much as New England Council does. And there is accountability measures associated with southern windowpane that can impact fisheries for probably summer flounder and scup at least. And that's because they, as a result of what's been going on with southern windowpane, the catch exceeded the commercial groundfish fisheries sub-ACL. And because that ACL is exceeded by more than 20%, there's a large AM area for southern windowpane that will be in effect for all trawl vessels on the groundfish trip. And for non-groundfish fish trawl vessels fishing with cod and mesh size of 5 inches or greater, there is a requirement that they will only be able to use a haddock separator trawl, a rule trawl, or a rope separator trawl, which is likely to significantly reduce catches of fluke and potentially scup. So that's why it's important to us. It's not again, it was a letter that was sent to the New England Council, wasn't sent to us, but it does have impact for our fishermen. That's likely to be in effect from May 1, 2026 through April 30th, 2027. And with that, what else do I have, Mary? That's it. So any questions on that or anything else that I presented in the report today? Yeah, Joe.
Well, I guess just as you mentioned, Chris, there's a likely timeline. Is this going to fall to Jason to track for us? Will we to continue to get updates?
Jason's my guy for a number of things, including tracking groundfish stuff. So yeah, he's going to let us know as things proceed. And I'm not sure if Garfa wants to say anything about it at this point, but the additional details are found in that letter. Other questions or comments? Yeah.
Report. Go ahead, Mike. Penn.
Yeah, so it won't be in effect until, I mean, as Chris said, it's intended to be in effect on May 1st, but we have to publish a notice in the Federal Register to actually implement it. That hasn't happened yet, but we're working on that. Just for context, just so people are aware sort of what drove this. The Southern Window Pane ABC is 213 metric tons for 2020. We're talking about 2024. The total catch was 425 metric tons, so double the ABC. The other subcomponent, sub-ACL, which is non-ground fish, non-scallop, non-state waters fisheries, caught 370% of the sub-ACL. So everything was well in excess of the ABC and the sub-ACLs allocated to the various fisheries. There's so that automatically triggers the accountability measures that are in the groundfish FMP. There's what we call the biomass criterion that allows us to shrink the size of the accountability measure area if certain criteria are met in terms of recent catch versus per tow versus 75% of the FMSY level. However, in this case, that did not. Catch was so high that we did not meet the biomass criterion. So that forces us to impose this, in the full area. There is another option that we'll review in the fall, where if the sub-ACL, if the ACL was not exceeded in 2025, then we can basically suspend the AM, part of the year. So that's what we're looking at. We'll continue to evaluate that. I don't have a whole lot of other information, but that's the basic circumstance. And I will say, because we've heard this question, the AM does not apply to state-only permitted vessels, and it only applies to vessels fishing with caught end mesh size of 5 inches or greater. Not to include, like, if they're using 5-inch mesh around a squid net or something like it, doesn't cover that. So it's only if your primary gear is 5-inch or greater.
We do have a couple hands that have gone up. So Bonnie, I do see you, but I'm going to stay in the at the table first. So I see Chris Savage's hand, and also actually, Jason, you had your hand up. Was there something that you wanted to comment on, and then I'll go to Chris?
Yeah, I was just going to flag. I've been diving into this in the last few weeks, both in terms of recent trends in catch and discards, and also trends in ABCs. Part of the issue, discards, contributing to that ABC overage, but the ABC is, I think, down by about 2/3 since 2017. So that's part of, what's driving this. Also trying to track, just trying to refamiliarize myself with where that ABC comes from. Is it a more standard assessment? Is it a more data poor or model resistant approach? So we're kind of digging into this. It doesn't seem to be any immediate ways to mitigate impacts on Mid-Atlantic fishermen, but we're kind of digging into it.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Chris Batsavage?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair, and yeah, thank you, Mike and Jason for the information on this. I should probably know the answer to this question, but besides the notice in the Federal Register, will federal permit holders also receive notice about these accountability measure closed areas? Because I'm thinking about the summer flounder fishery, which is widely dispersed from Massachusetts, North Carolina, and you have fishermen from multiple states, potentially fishing, in some of these areas off southern New England. I just want to make sure that that everyone's aware of this, so there's no one unintentionally fishing illegally in these accountability measure locations. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Yeah, so definitely once the notice files and we've actually implemented the accountability measures, then we will, send out a permit holder letter as we do for all of our actions and postings on the webpage. So we'll get the word out once it's implemented, or once we publish that it's being implemented.
Okay, that's all I saw from council members, so I'll go to the public. Bonnie Brady?
Bonnie Brady, New England Fishermen Stewardship Association. Yeah, I don't know if the council can do anything in the way of writing a letter, and Jason's been extremely helpful, and thank you, Jason, for once again diving into the Southern New England window pane pool. Just so the council knows, part of the reason that they originally created the AM, it was part of Framework 42, and at that point, Southern New England window pane was overfished and overfishing was occurring. They are not. They are not overfished. They're nothing of the case. They also cut the overall number dramatically with 2023. They were supposed to have a benchmark. Instead, they had an update, so it got whacked. But the sheer numbers of window pane that were supposedly caught, I'm not sure whether that's actually correct. Also, I mean, I fought this back in 2012 to 2014, where New England Council never allowed, once they were using an AIM index model to do the fishery, they never allowed the amount when it was considered rebuilt to grow. They always kept it at a number. I think the highest ever was at 500. And they never, ever allowed it, even though it was growing, to give it a larger number. It was a council decision. I tried originally under an emergency between 2012 and 2014, but apparently by the time 2014 came around, it would not be considered an emergency because they knew about the problem, but they never voted on priority to do something. I asked for mixed stock exception. They also never voted for that as a priority, and I think that's in a letter that I saw somewhere that I can send around. I'm not sure if that was in the information regarding that or not. Actually, it was, Chris, you had written a letter requesting if the New England Council needed help in making it a mixed stock exception. You were offering staff assistance. They still said no, and then we went for ecosystem component, and they have still said no. So this is, in our opinion right now, a punitive accountability measure for a stock that's completely rebuilt. And I'm not even sure, I mean, the numbers are so insane. It's 378 metric tons or 300 plus. I think 120 or 150 metric tons is supposedly in the squid fishery. We don't know where the observer data came from. There's actually 3 separate bins under CAMS for squid by itself, squid loligo, and squid whiting. So I really want to get some information on that if we can find out from the SPRM report to see when that supposed bycatch occurred. I don't know if this is a sand dabs to sand dollars issue or not, but any help that the council can offer us would be huge, because unfortunately, Mike, waiting until the fall is going to really strangle a lot of guys that want to be able to catch fluke. Also, I think the skate bait fishery, I had sent you an email about that, but they're going to get whacked too, completely. And so we really need something to, I don't know, letter to the secretary, whatever you can do. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I have a couple more hands up online, but I did miss one at the table, so I believe Lori Nolan, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mike, I'm just wondering, you said you guys are working on the 2025 landings, collecting all that information. Any idea when that data will be finalized and perhaps a modification to the AM?
Probably September. I mean, the 2020, for clarity, the 2025 fishing year is still going on. So it's, because it's the groundfish fishing year.
Overlap.
Yeah,
right,
so by the
right,
time,
right.
we get to May, and then it's, we're analyzing the discard data,
Yeah.
which takes a while to work through the process. So it takes a few months to do a total catch accounting for the groundfish stocks.
Was thinking calendar.
No, it's a helpful clarification. Okay, back to online. I saw Shanna Madsen, you're next.
Thank you. Shanna Madsen with Connecticut Deep. My question was just answered. I did kind of want to know exactly when we would be able to get some of this information, because obviously this is 2024 data that's impacting 2026. I'm very glad to hear that we can at least use the preliminary 2025 data to potentially shorten this up. I do also just want to make a comment to bring some attention to how big of a problem this is, at least for the state of Connecticut. I've been doing some rough calculations on our landings that are coming from this area, and we're looking at about 1/3 of our fluke landings coming from this area and about half of our skate landings coming from this area. So this could have a very major impact on those fisheries. Thank you, Bonnie, for bringing up that skate bait fishery. That's something that we're very concerned about. So I know that we're not a part of the Mid-Atlantic Council, but anything that we can do to add our voices to just kind of drawing attention to this issue is great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Got one more hand, and that's Greg DiDomenico. Go ahead, Greg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just, can I ask a quick question of the Executive Director?
Yes, go ahead.
Chris, good morning. Could you go back to your presentation on this topic and go back to the part of the rule where you can use 3 different types of gear types? I think you said the rule trawl, haddock separated trawl, and there was a third.
What was the third? Hang on, Greg. We'll back up. Garfo can tell us probably quickly. So there are 3. They are the haddock separator trawl, a rule trawl, or a rope separator trawl. So those are the 3.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I think that'll, for now, obviously this is more to come, but I think that's all the hands we have, so. Well, actually, Jason has his hand back.
Stephen, can you let me share? And I think we may have New England staff online who can kind of confirm. But just in terms of, okay, I think I'm sharing here now. So I'm just kind of tracing out the ABCs for Southern New England window pane here. So 2024, I think, is that first year of substantially reduced ABCs. The ACL is a little bit less than that. So, it seems, that the higher ABCs had been covering catch recently. With these low ABCs, I don't know we'll have the same kind of relief we've had in the past, where that next year's catch being lower then allows relaxation of that. So while that's possible, just in terms of expectations, these low ABCs may kind of keep us stuck in this bind. And if I've kind of mischaracterized that, then New England staff can. I think that's the ABC trajectory that is kind of partially driving this, and that's going to be around for a few years, it appears.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Jason. Bonnie, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to notice also that, okay. No, I have to use this, sorry. Do you want me to, oh, there's no one there to move. How about if I do it from here? Okay. The 2023 update also included apparently the 2023 State of the Ecosystem Report. So I believe that they referred to window pane as being in poor condition, but, and I'm wrong on that, please someone correct me. It did not have to do with specifically trawl survey information. That may play a part in that.
Okay, thank you for that. With that, we will move on. We'll let Chris finish the executive director's report.
Yeah, I'm done, Mr. Chair, unless there's other questions or comments. On that last topic, we will provide an update in June, so we'll have an idea where we're at, but thank you, and I'm done.
Very good, appreciate that, Chris. We'll move on to the organizational reports. We're going to start with Garfo, so I'll go to Mike Pentney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Buckle up, I've got a lot. So first, I wanted to talk about a recreational roundtable meeting that we had recently. On March 31st, we hosted the Mid-Atlantic Recreational Fisheries Roundtable via webinar. We had 110 attendees, which was great. 65 members of the public, 20 members of our council and state partners. This was a good way for us to connect with the recreational community. Topics of discussion included the Recreational Angler Partnership Improvement Directive. Mike, that's RAPID, which is sort of a pivot from MRIP that we're rolling out. The desire of the recreational community for regulatory stability, and then sort of starting to think about the 2027 National Saltwater Recreational Fisheries Summit that the agency is planning, obviously, for next year. We'll be posting a meeting summary and materials on our website soon. But really appreciate everybody who participated, some good discussions, a lot of discussion, of course, around MRIP and the data that we use, and some discussion around the Mid-Atlantic Council's work, and sort of, the recreational improvement program. Want to also talk about a couple other things. So I think you're all aware of this, but on February 19th, we published the final rule, finally implementing the 2026 and projected 2027 specifications for summer flounder, scup, and black sea bass and bluefish. The action also established the 2026 bluefish recreational management measures. Everything was as recommended by the council. We talked a lot yesterday about the scup winter one commercial closure. But I did want to remind all of the states that because the fishery was closed prior to April 15th, there is still time if the states would like to submit a letter to me requesting that your commercial scup landings from state-only permitted vessels that are fishing exclusively in state waters between April 15th and April 30th could be counted against your summer period quota rather than the winter one quota. Otherwise, all landings by state-only vessels will continue to accrue towards the winter one quota that has been exceeded. On March 27th, we published an interim final rule implementing Framework 40 to the Scallop Fishery Management Plan, obviously managed by the New England Council, but of interest to many people in the Mid-Atlantic as well. Framework 40 was effective on April 1st. It established scallop specs for fishing years 2026, and the default measures for 2027, including days at sea, limited access general category allocations, and the Northern Gulf of Maine set aside. That fishery is up and running right now and will probably be closing, next, I don't know, in a few days to a week. And it modified area designations to optimize yield and to protect juvenile scallops. Even though it's implemented, it's an interim final rule, so we're still accepting comments on that rule through April 27th. I'm going to pivot slightly to another issue that is maybe of interest to people with permits. So many of you who have vessel permits know that when you apply for or renew or transfer your vessel permit, you need to provide a valid certificate of documentation for the vessel. Because of the ongoing lapse in appropriations affecting the Coast Guard is not issuing new or renewed certificates of documentation. So that creates a problem for people trying to renew their vessel permit if they don't have that new valid COD. So to accommodate that, given that most of our permits expire, I think, around now or in May, until further notice, we are accepting for some cases fishing permit applications without a current COD. And you can renew your permit or process a transfer if you have evidence that you have at least applied to renew your COD. And so all of this information has been sent out to permit holders, but just for the record, Fish Online, that usually when you renew a permit, if you don't enter a valid COD date, it won't let you submit. So we've modified that so that you can submit the package, and then you just upload to us or email it to us a copy of your renewal application for your COD, and then we will process the permit application. If you're transferring a permit or changing a vessel name, if you provide your sort of evidence, your expired COD and evidence that you've applied for a renewal of a COD, then we will process that package. Same thing if you're changing vessel ownership, selling a vessel, buying a vessel. If you have the seller's most recent COD, the buyer's application for a COD, and the bill of sale signed by both the buyer and the seller, then we will process that transfer. And basically, we intend to continue to follow this protocol probably for some period of time, 30 to 60 days after the shutdown ends, because we expect that the Coast Guard vessel documentation services will have quite the backlog given the extent of the shutdown. Okay, moving on to some other fishery management actions. On February 23rd, we published an interim rule adjusting the Atlantic mackerel specs to increase the quota. We're still working on Framework 17, which would further increase the quota according to the Council's recommendations, and also increase the possession limits. The interim final rule took effect on February 23rd, and the comment period was open through March 25th. We're going to respond to any comments that we received in the interim final rule that we intend to use for Framework 17. And we're going to talk a little bit about that at the end as well. On March 16th, we published a proposed rule for the 2026 chub mackerel, squid, and butterfish specifications. The comment period on that proposed rule is open through April 15th. Chris also mentioned this, but on March 30th, we published a proposed rule for the 2026 specifications for golden and blue line tilefish. Sets new specifications for blue line and reaffirms previously projected specs for golden tilefish. Comment period is open through April 14th. March 26th, we published a proposed rule for the Northeast Skate Complex FMP to set skate specs for 2026 and project specs for 2027 and 2028, and proposed increasing possession limits in both the wing and the bait skate fisheries. The comment period closes tomorrow on the 10th, and we're trying to get appropriate catch limits for the skate fishery while providing additional operational flexibility through increased possession limits. Moving on to a couple of groundfish items for the New England Council. On March 9th, we published the final rule for Framework 69, which is the 2025 specifications for the groundfish fishery. It also modified some accountability measures for the scallop fishery on Georges Bank, for Georges Bank yellowtail flounder, the northern window pane flounder, and removed certain reporting requirements for sectors. The final rule also approved sector operations plans for fishing years 2025 and 2026, and set recreational measures for Gulf of Maine haddock and updated common pool possession limits, trip limits. Related to Framework 69, on April 6th, we announced that we had approved Amendment 25 to the Groundfish FMP. This is the plan that was originally submitted in 2024, was disapproved in May of 25, and has now been, with a resubmission and a revision, has now been approved. It changes how we manage the Atlantic cod fishery from having 2 biological stocks to now having 4 biological stocks. We published the proposed rule for that action on March 18th, and the comment period on the proposed rule is open through April 17th, after which we will review the comments and hopefully get a final rule out in the coming months. Let's see. Fishing year 2026 recreational measures for Gulf of Maine cod and Gulf of Maine haddock. We sent a letter to the New England Council announcing those. If you're really interested, you can talk to me after, but in the interest of time, since it's Gulf of Maine, I'll be brief. Chris mentioned this. We approved Amendment 21 to the Surf Clam and Ocean Quahog FMP. This is the species separation amendment that the council worked on for many years in close collaboration with the industry. So that was formally approved on March 25th. As I think everybody knows, we have not published a proposed rule yet for that because we're still working with industry on some of the specifics of how the monitoring and accountability would work. So we have some EFPs out working with the industry for them to work with Rutgers and others to develop those protocols. So once we get the results of the EFP, I'm sure we'll be working with the council to develop those proposed regulations. And let's see, we're updating, our permit office is updating its electronic vessel permitting process. Permit holders and individuals that are authorized to act on their behalf. So in other words, if you have a company that is authorized to work with you, such as a vessel documentation company or something like that, they can sign your vessel permits electronically through the Fish Online portal, either print or download a copy to a mobile device. A paper electronic copy is acceptable, provided it is readily accessible on board the vessel at all times, including when at sea without cellular service. So you just download it to your phone and then you've got it. We're also updating the process for issuing letters of authorization. You can continue to apply for or withdraw from letters of authorization programs through the Fish Online portal, but we're not issuing or emailing copies of those. You can just download them directly from Fish Online. And then, although the summer flounder small mesh exemption program has not yet, the changes to that have not yet been approved, we are changing the process to get those LOAs. So it's a fully electronic self-service program. If you're eligible, you can use Fish Online, enroll in the program, and as I said, you just download your LOA directly from the system. The requests under this pilot are processed automatically in real time. There's no review from our permit office staff. And so hopefully this will allow vessels to enroll in that program much faster. And then I think I just have one more thing. Hopefully you've seen this in the media, but on April 6th, we published a final rule rescinding regulations issued under the Magnuson-Stevens Act that had restricted commercial fishing within the Northeast Canyons Seamounts Marine National Monument. We did this to conform our regulations with the February 6th presidential proclamation from President Trump that removed the prohibition from commercial fishing in the monument. So that final rule is effective immediately. Because though, however, the Georges Bank Deep Sea Coral Protection Area overlaps substantially with the monument, I want to be really clear that reopening the monument to commercial fishing allows the commercial red crab fishery to operate anywhere within the boundaries of the monument. Commercial Atlantic highly migratory species and pelagic fishing can operate anywhere within the boundaries of the monument. But bottom tending gear to be fished can only be fished in the portion of the monument that does not overlap with the deep sea coral protection area. So in the northern sort of section of the monument. And that includes trap and pot gear for lobster, otter trawls, dredges, and other gear. So although fishing in the monument is authorized, the deep sea coral protection area still is in place. And I will stop there and see if there's any questions.
Any questions on the Garfield report so far? Go ahead, Carrie, go ahead.
Thanks for indulging me. The closures happened since our meeting, so I'm wondering, Mike, if you know if that certificate of documentation sort of snafu has been addressed agency-wide, or is that a Garfo specific?
Yeah, great question. So the allowance for using expired CODs is an agency-wide agreement. The individual process for how permits are issued or renewed is obviously region specific. But yeah, so we're all operating under the same directive from headquarters.
Okay, and you do have one more hand, John Maniscalco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just wondering, so this is going back to the winter one SCUP and the usage of summer quota after April 15th. The current regulations allow only for state licensed vessels to participate in state waters in that fishery. And is it a frameworkable issue to consider allowing federal permit holders working within state waters to also take advantage, since that is state quota? Thanks.
I think something we can look into, John. Hadn't thought of that yet, but we can look into that and work with council staff and certainly bring it up, the next time the group gets together to talk about that SCUP framework.
Thank you.
Mike Louisi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The question is more for you about the possibility of maybe having the council write a letter based on the report that was part of, I would assume, this regional office report that occurred yesterday when ASMFC asked for Mike to report out on the status of where we are with recreational black sea bass and summer flounder measures for this year. And in light of the information that we received, I'll speak for myself, but also for our region. The southern region this is a dire situation for us if the harvest control rule process doesn't see its way through. If that process doesn't unfold, on May 1st of this year, there are going to be fishermen who expect, given the precedent that we've set over the years, that state waters measures, when we implement state waters measures, those measures have been when you go to federal waters, you can fish for your state waters measures. And so there are going to be people leaving Ocean City on May 1st going sea bass fishing. And that's only 20 days from now. And when they get out to federal waters, unless something happens between now and May 1st, they're going to have an entirely different set of rules that are extremely restrictive on them. And so think about the messaging that we have to provide. We have a stock, and we can liberalize our rules this year, yet a process is not allowing for that liberalization to occur. And instead of liberalizing our rules, the southern region is going to be faced with extremely restrictive measures. 15-inch black sea bass in our region is few and far between. It's going to be really bad. And I could go on and on and on for a long time about this, but I wanted to get your advice, Mr. Chairman, about I believe that this is worthy of a council letter to the service, highlighting the economic concerns that we have for our charter and private angling fleets, as well as the inequity that a coast-wide measure has on the southern region when compared to the states that have very similar measures in state waters in New England. So I just wanted to get your thought on that and see maybe what if we have the time to put in. I will offer my time to help staff if needed to work on the document to get that out. But I just wanted to ask you about that before we turn to the next report.
Yeah, thanks. And I to be clear, I think there was, Mike, maybe a few other items that you might also be covering. So we're not totally wrapping up, I think, from what Mike Pentney has to share. I think as far as this goes, we heard from ASMFC, and obviously how this impacts CE and the commission process is very important too. I think we could certainly work with them. I think there are issues, particularly on timing and communication, and how that's shared and with, just so that we have a good understanding of what's coming our way. I agree. I think that's completely appropriate. So we can work on a draft for that, and I think it'll be valuable to stay in touch with the commission as well. So I have a couple hands, so I'd like to go to the executive director first, and then we'll go to Joe Grist.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the proposal is that we develop a letter on this topic and send it to who? NOAA Fisheries, Secretary of Commerce, both, everybody. Okay. So yeah, certainly from a staff perspective, we could develop that letter next week. We could do it two ways. We can either just do the letter, have Joe review it, sign it, off it goes, or allow folks to review it for a day or so. So it's really up to you. What's your preference?
I think the day or two may matter. So I'm comfortable with the council preparing something based on the conversations that we haven't had much conversation on this, but I think the council's aware of what these consequences will be within many of the states that are part of this council. And so in my opinion, it's appropriate. But the quicker, the better. Okay. So I don't need to see anything if you guys are comfortable. If Joe's comfortable with it, I trust Joe, given that he's in the same situation that I am as a state director, having facing this and the challenges of dealing with this with our stakeholders. It's not a light matter. So thank you.
So with that, Mr. Chair, yeah, we'll make it a priority. Have that letter out early next week.
Yeah, and if there are any council members that have particular items that they would hope to see in there, please reach out, and can't promise that everything will be included, but feel free to reach out, and we'll do our best to incorporate what we believe is appropriate. And we did have Joe Grist. I'm imagining that's on this as well. So
briefly, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Everything Mike says, I agree. I'm sure some of my counterpart to South, Chris, is on here. I'm sure he's going to agree to it. We'll move this expedited manner. I did want to make a note to my counterpart to North, though, that he mentioned going out fishing on May 1st. If I remember right, the federal rules don't allow us to go fishing on May 15th for black sea bass. So I hope they don't go on May 1st because they're already going to be in violation. So just to put that on the record, so anyone listening here thinks they're going out on May 1st, they're not going anywhere.
yeah, I'm going to allow Mike a follow up, and we did have Chris's hand up as well. So
yeah, just to clarify, our state waters rules will open on May 1st. And as I mentioned yesterday, I signed the public notice on Monday, and that it will be published either tomorrow or early next week. So people will see that, and they will think that on May 1st, everything outside of Ocean City Inlet is open, because for the past 15 years, that's been the case. So messaging is going to be just as important as anything else. And if anyone from Maryland is listening right now, please pay attention to this public notice that we put out, because there will be guidance in that regarding the discrepancies that we're facing with these challenges that we've already spoken of. So We're going to try to get that message clear for our public, but there are a lot of people that won't see that, and they'll have no idea that this is happening when they hit that 3 mile line. So thanks.
Okay, Chris Batsavage, did you have a follow-up as well?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Just real quick, agree with everything said so far and appreciate the letter. I guess to put this in perspective, this is, I think, the first time this has happened with black sea bass since we have conservation equivalency for it. And Mike and Joe pointed out that in the southern area, it's largely a federal waters fishery. And in contrast, with summer flounder, this has happened before. Where the southern states had year-round fisheries, but conservation equivalency wouldn't be approved until sometime in the spring. But most of that fishing occurs in state waters. At least in North Carolina, there's very few for hire captains with summer flounder permits because everyone fishes in state waters. So this is a much bigger deal. And I think the conversations yesterday and today are kind of helping me try to communicate this with our stakeholders in the northeastern part of the state. We haven't put out our regs yet, but we want to make sure that they're not caught on the wrong side of the 3 mile line whenever we do open up our state water. So appreciate all of this. Thank you.
Rich Wong.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are in Delaware. We are in the exact same boat as Maryland, and thank you, Mike, for bringing this request to the council. And I will be also available to help in any way I can for this letter. Thanks.
Yeah, no, thank you. Much appreciated. Okay. Not seeing any other hands on this. As Mike Pitney had mentioned, there were some other items, specifically mackerel, that I believe ties to the update we got. So we'll go into that now, Mike, if we could. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. So that was kind of my things I was reporting on, but I do have a question for the council that I would like to get some resolution on related to Framework 17 for mackerel, which the council adopted in December. And so, the council's proposed to change the possession limit for the recreational possession limits. And recall that going from 20 fish per person for everybody to 25 fish per person for private anglers and 50 fish for for-hire patrons. That's the way the motion was written. Now, I wanted to clarify a couple of aspects of that. And ordinarily, we would publish, the proposed rule as deemed by the council, and then flag any questions that we have for clarification, and then get comments, make a decision. In the final rule, we would clarify and address it. In the interest of trying to get the framework implemented as soon as possible, we're pivoting to an interim final rule, which we hope to get out sooner than we'd be able to get a proposed and final rule out. So given that, we need to kind of resolve this issue before we submit the interim final, so that we don't have to go back and change it, hopefully. And so basically what it comes down to is the motion that the council adopted, which I don't have directly in front of me, but I'm sure is accessible, specified 50 fish for for-hire patrons. And so then the next step in the process that we work through is we draft the proposed regulatory text, and we submit it to council leadership for them to review it and deem it as consistent with the intent of the council. And so the regulations that were deemed by the council, by Chris and Joe, state that the recreational Atlantic mackerel possession limit for vessels issued a charter party permit is 50 Atlantic mackerel per patron per trip. The owner, operator, and crew on board a charter or party boat issued permit are subject to the recreational possession limit for private anglers of 25 fish per person per trip when carrying passengers for hire. So first off, I just wanted to, first of all, we raised that as there's a disconnect there, a potential equity issue where the crew of the for-hire trip are subject to a different possession limit than their patrons. That's not unprecedented. We have it in a number of fisheries where the captain and crew actually don't get a possession limit. It's only the patrons. But having one possession limit that applies to patrons and a different possession limit that applies to the captain and crew creates some enforcement, complexities. But the other issue is that with mackerel in particular, for-hire vessels, we understand will often bait load, they'll go out and they'll catch some mackerel, fill up a bait well, so that then they can bring, paying customers out on a Highland migratory or tuna trip. The regulations don't specify what the possession limit would be for hire vessels when not carrying passengers for hire. In other words, if they want to go out early morning and load up on bait or the night before. So I wanted to get clarification before we publish a rule, what the council's intent is. One, to confirm whether it is the intent that there should be two different possession limits on a for-hire trip, one for the patrons and a different one for the crew. And then if that is the intent, what's the council's intent in terms of for-hire crew going out to get to fill up a bait well before they get passengers on board? So those are the questions I have. I think Chris has been prepared to talk about that as well. Jason's aware, but I'm hoping to get a resolution on this so that we can proceed with rulemaking for Framework 17.
Greg Hewitt.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I appreciate that. I think that when, in this situation here, I think when the customers are present, I think that they should, be able to go out and, catch the 50 fish or whatever. But if they are not present, they are 25 fish, if they're going to go to use that for bait or for their own private use on a separate level. So when the for hire customer is present on the boat, I think that they should be able to keep 50 fish along with the crew, the one crew member that he has. But on another level, when they are not present, a customer, because it was created for the for hire fleet to have customers, when they are not present on the boat, I feel as if they're 25 fish and they can bring other people along if that's what they want to do to catch bait. So that's my feeling with that. And I think that's why we made the rule, was for the for hire, to get from 25 to 50 fish and to be better. But from a, law enforcement standpoint, I do think it would be easier if the crew and the captain had 50 fish.
Bobby.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Honestly, I didn't foresee this being an issue. I've never actually thought about it. I didn't realize or never even thought that the captain and mates on party charter would take fish on a trip by trip basis. That being said, I don't think it would really, add up to that many. The total amount wouldn't be that much, and just for simplicity's sake, I mean, I'm not going against Greg, but I mean, I think just to make it cleaner and easier, if you just had one possession limit, 50 fish regardless. If you're going out for a bait trip, then that's something a little bit different. But I mean, I don't see having a truncated possession limit and trying to get. I think it just makes it much more complicated if you're a for hire but you don't have patrons, so now you're held to this, but you're going for bait, and then I think it's just easier just to lump it all together and just keep it at the 50 fish.
I think we've had discussions around the table about the complexity of what it means when you're not carrying passengers, though. So I had Paul, and then I'll go to Caleb.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to agree with Greg on this one, simply because when they're going out and fishing for bait, they're just catching mackerel for bait for a different fishery. And I think we can run into issues where people are just going to go and get that federal for hire permit and say they're bait fishing, and then everybody can have 50 fish. Thank you.
I'm going to go to Caleb Gilbert, and then I'm going to go to Jason Didden. And if we can get Caleb, Mike, great, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just concur with what Bobby said. The simpler the better. If it's, you have a for hire endorsement and it's 50 fish no matter what for enforcement purposes, that's the simplest scenario. Or if you go to 25 fish, whatever's the simplest across the board. It's not going to say we can't enforce it if it's, for, inquiring whether they have paying guests on board or not. I mean, I think that's simple enough. If that's where we're drawing the line, and okay, you have for hire guests, now you can, do 50 fish per person. I think in that scenario, it is simpler for us, for the crew and the patrons, to then all have the same possession limit. And certainly if there's no paying guests, a set number, we can follow that. But I mean, it's not a deal breaker for us if it's, not going to be across the board one possession limit, no matter what, if you have a for hire endorsement. But I'll just make the pitch for simpler the better for enforcement purposes.
Okay, thank you. Jason Didden?
Thanks. Stephen, can you let me share? Thanks. So here is the motion on the possession limit. There is a bit of ambiguity about how crew is treated. And I mean, given the enforcement concerns, given for hire catch overall is a tiny part of even rec catch, so a tiny part of overall catch, given the enforcement concerns. I mean, if someone just goes and gets a for hire permit, I mean, they have to report every single one of their trips after that, including all their private trips, right? I think once someone picks up a party charter permit, they have to report all their trips on VTRs, including all their private trips associated with that permit. So I don't know that is super likely, given that to try to facilitate this moving forward in a simple way. If Mike Pentney concurs, and maybe it's simplest just to have on for hire trips, they have a 50 fish possession limit for everyone on board on for hire trips. I mean, maybe that keeps it simple and lets this proceed, which has a lot of benefits to both commercial and recreational folks if this action can proceed without complications.
Okay, thanks, Jason. I see Anna, go ahead.
Yeah, and to Jason's point, if you write it as for hire trips, then you're still running into the same problem. How do you, if you're out bait fishing, that's technically not a for hire trip. You're just preparing for a for hire trip. So I think I would lean towards just having it be 50 fish for the for hire vessels or whatever. Like how I would go with the simple version. I don't think it's going to be that big of an issue.
Yeah, I mean, I looked to Chris because obviously Joe, you and Chris deem the regs, and we want to make sure that whatever ends up in our rule is consistent with your intent with deeming. And so that's one reason why I'm bringing this up today. And I think to get it sort of, I think some of the comments we've heard, we could write the regulation to say the recreational mackerel possession limit for vessels issued a squid, mackerel, butterfish charter party permit is 50 Atlantic mackerel per person per trip, including captains and crew. That's the most straightforward, simple way to do it. To address, the comments from Greg and Paul, we could add when carrying passengers for hire, and then add another sentence that says when not carrying passengers for hire, vessels issued this permit are subject to the private angler limit of 25 fish per person per trip. So there'd be two sentences instead of one, and it would just clarify when carrying passengers for hire, there's one limit. When not there's a different limit that's consistent with private anglers. I'm comfortable either way. I just want to make sure that the council is comfortable with whichever the solution is, so that we can proceed with rulemaking.
Yeah, Greg, go ahead.
Mike, I think that's perfect. You know, you worded it, couldn't get any better than that. You know, you worded it perfectly, you know, from my standpoint anyway. So thanks.
But let's be, so that's, I think, one thing before we walk away from this, everyone needs to be clear.
So I want to go back to my version of it. I think that the reason, and, you know, not to, you know, go back and forth with Bobby or anything like that, but the reason we did this, it was for hire people to get the advantage. Listen, I bait fish too. Okay. So for me, it's, you know, I'm going to have to bring a friend along or whatever to catch my extra 25 fish, but you're you know, I feel like we're breaking the precedence there a little bit, you know? So I would prefer, you know, to have the 25 fish, okay, when customers are not on board. And when there are people present for hire, we have the 50 for everyone.
There's still a few hands up. So what I'm going to ask Jason, since you're sharing, I think we may need a motion on this. And so if you wouldn't mind trying to draft what Mike had just explained, with, you know, perhaps the simpler version that drops off that it's always 50, and the more expanded version of if there are no passengers aboard, then the crew would be subject to the 25. And then I still have a few hands up, so I'll go to Mike Louisi and then Paul.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I don't want to get cross with Greg, but I do like the idea that when you turn your key on your boat, that's the deciding factor as to what type of trip that is. And then everybody on that trip is subject to the same rule. It just seems really straightforward and simple to me. Instead of turning the key, going out fishing, and then having two different limits on the same trip based on the people. I think the trip should define what the reg is rather than the people on the boat during the trip. And so for me, what Mike said makes a lot more sense. It just seems much more simple. I'd be happy to make a motion to keep this thing moving along. But I'm not going to try to come up with that one off the top of my head. Maybe if Jason's helping us out with that.
Yeah, well, and we'll I think we'll be able to buy him some time because I think we have a few more hands. So Paul Reese.
Thank you. A quick question for the RA. I've never been in this situation. So a federally permitted vessel, when they make a private trip, they're still required to fill out a VTR? Then I'm all for it. It's a backdoor in for rec reporting. I would support that.
Okay, so all right, Jason, it sounds like you may be getting some assistance via email. Okay, by email. And then, you know, so as we work on the wording, because I do want to make sure, as Mike Pentney said, we want to try and get this right as an interim rule. A version of this that simply allows it as 50 fish for the for-hire fleet, or if there is, I guess, what's the opposite of an exemption? A further restriction if they're not carrying passengers. Okay. A couple hands. I'm going to go to Chris Batsafage, and then I see Nicola's hand up, so we'll go to Nicola after that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's a similar allowance for spot and croaker in the ASMFC plans where recreational for hire vessels may possess live croaker or spot for use as bait while the trigger measures are in effect. That's, you know, the 50 fish bag for the private anglers. The maximum number of croaker allowed to be held on board for this use prior to beginning a trip, during a trip, or after a trip is completed will be the bag limit in effect multiplied by the number of customers allowed on the vessel. And this sounds similar to what was described here is, you know, a captain may want to go out and catch bait ahead of time, so they're not spending, you know, a portion of the trip with paying customers trying to catch bait. They can just go straight out to the fishing grounds. So anyways, I just wanted to flag that as kind of a similar example that's already used in a couple of ASMFC plans. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. Nicola Missouri.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the opportunity to comment on this. I did want to raise that there could be complications with, the state permitting regulations and definitions. Believe in Massachusetts that, we define a for-hire trip by the passengers on the vessel, being on the vessel, patrons being on the vessel. So I think that there could be a risk of, a difference between what the council approves, depending on the motion, and what state regulations allow. Just also thinking about how in summer flounder, Scott black sea bass, and bluefish with the recreational sector separation amendment process, we're thinking about a control date and other mechanisms to limit recreational anglers from getting a for-hire permit to access different regulations. So I think that is a consideration here as well, and I would be supportive of the 50 fish allowance applying only while on a for-hire trip, meaning it is carrying patrons at that time. Thank you.
Okay, I appreciate that. Mike Penny.
Yeah, thanks. So the option that we put together is on the board and on the screen. So it's two sentences. When carrying passengers for hire, the recreational possession limit for vessels issued the charter party permit is 50 fish per person, including captains and crew. When not carrying passengers for hire, the limit is 25 fish per person per trip. The alternative to that would be to delete the second sentence and delete the first phrase of the first sentence. So it would just read, the possession limit is 50 fish per person per trip, including captains and crew. I think those are two viable options. I've heard support for both options around the table. And hopefully we can resolve this quickly and pick one.
Yep, and best way to do that is to get started. So we will start with the longer version of this. If somebody wants to make an amendment, we can have that discussion. But since we have the wording up for what Nicola has just described, if somebody is willing to make that motion and read that into the record quickly, that would be great. If I could see a hand. Paul Reese, if Paul, you'd be able to.
That was with the first phrase out and the last sentence out, right?
No, within. We're going to start within. So.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Never mind.
Michelle Duval.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll make that motion.
Okay, thank you.
I move that the council clarify that when carrying passengers for hire, the recreational Atlantic mackerel possession limit for vessels issued a squid, mackerel, butterfish, charty permit is 50 Atlantic mackerel per person per trip, including captains and crew. When not carrying passengers for hire, the recreational Atlantic mackerel possession limit for vessels issued a squid, mackerel, butterfish, charty party permit is 25 Atlantic mackerel per person per trip.
Do I have a second? Okay, Greg Hughes. Further discussion on this? Okay, I'm going to ask for a show of hands.
Yep.
Yes. Well, those in favor, please raise your hand. I don't think we have it. Okay, thank you. You can put your hands down. Those opposed? All right, so the motion passes, yes, sorry. The motion passes 10-3 with one abstention from the service.
13-5, one abstention service. But your mic.
So, Jason, the count was 13, including those council members online, 5 opposed, 1 abstention from the service. Great, thank you. And I will look back to Mike Pentney.
Yeah, so thank you, everybody. I realize it wasn't, unanimous consensus on this, but I feel like we have some direction to move forward now so that we can be assured that we're moving forward with at least the majority opinion of the council. But I'll note, we will publish this as an interim final rule. We'll take comments on it, and it's something obviously that can be revised in the future. So if we hear a lot of comments that it should be uniform for all trips from a vessel with a for-hire permit, then we can obviously make that adjustment at some point in the future. But for now, we'll proceed according to this motion. Thank you.
Okay, so that'll conclude the Garfo report. Next up, Northeast Fisheries Science Center. Hopefully John doesn't have as many curveballs. Go ahead, John.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'll try to be quick. As Hannah talked about, Northeast Fisheries Science Center Spring Bottom Trawl Survey, it is underway. Leg 1 departed about a week late. So we typically just start the survey as planned and then make up any days in the Gulf of Maine, which created challenges that she talked about that we discussed at NTAP. So this year we took a different approach and we reduced station density from the get-go. So that the intent is that station density throughout the trawl survey area will be comparable, as opposed to having the trawl station density higher in the southern part of the survey area than the northern part of the survey area. So we are making progress on the survey. She's south of Long Island now, in the middle of leg 2, and we'll continue to let the council know as we make progress. We are going to add 10 days to the back end of the trawl survey because of the delays that we've been experiencing, similar to what we had to do in the fall. And this will impact, to an extent, the spring ecosystem monitoring survey, which is used for the egg index for mackerel. So the 2 programs, Ecosystem Surveys Branch and our Oceanography Branch, are coordinating to have some of the mackerel egg sampling be done during the spring bottom trawl survey when it is in the mackerel spawning area. So they're trying to, make the best out of using both platforms to support the objectives of both surveys. And so that we'll continue to report on how that sort of combined operation work is being conducted. And then for our scallop work, scallop HabCam and the long range AUV work is planned for Bigelow. And we have our scallop dredge work on industry vessel planned for June 19th to June 28th. So that's the survey update. In terms of our cooperative research activities, Cooperative Research Summit was held last week after being delayed because of the snowstorm that we heard about earlier in the meeting. Very successful, 150 fishermen, scientists gathered to learn about ongoing cooperative research in the region and think about, next steps. In 2027, the Cooperative Research Summit will be in Massachusetts, location still to be determined. The Science Center, and I did mention this at one previous meeting, this interest in cooperative research around the Atlantic mackerel fishery. The Science Center did receive funding to support that work, and so we are initiating an Atlantic mackerel cooperative research initiative with 5 main objectives. Objective 1 is to develop new tools for quantifying mackerel biomass, including acoustic technologies on industry vessels. Objective 2 is to characterize the spawning seasonality of Atlantic mackerel on the U.S. continental shelf using industry collected samples. Objective 3 is to evaluate the uncertainties and sensitivities in the Atlantic Mackerel Egg Index. Understanding the spawning seasonality is a big part of that. So Objective 2 and Objective 3 are linked. Objective 4, characterize the contingent mixing of Atlantic mackerel with a focus on movement between U.S. and Canadian waters. Just to explain that in a little more detail, Atlantic mackerel extends up into Newfoundland waters. It is one stock, but there are two contingents. The northern contingent predominantly stays in Canadian waters, and the southern contingent sort of moves between Canadian and U.S. waters. So understanding that the contingent mixing is important moving forward in terms of managing the stock. And then Objective 5 is looking at some of the ecosystem drivers for Atlantic mackerel abundance. We are working, the notice has already gone out to ask vessels to collect Atlantic mackerel for this work, for the spawning seasonality, for age and growth work, collecting through the year, not just when our surveys, our trawl surveys are conducted. And we are having a kickoff meeting with the industry and science partners on May 21st. We have an upcoming visit from the Scottish Fishermen's Organization in June. There'll be 16 fishermen from the Scottish Fishermen's Organization visiting New England. Cooperative research team will arrange tours of fishing vessels, shoreside facilities, and meeting with scientists and fishermen. If there is interest in this, you can reach out to me, john.hare@noaa.gov, and I can put you in touch with the cooperative research team. Our ecosystem monitoring on lobster traps program is going very well. It was recently highlighted in a New York Times article, and they are integrating industry collected environmental data across other programs and have established what they call the FishBot program. And there is a website describing FishBot, and I will share that with Chris at the end of my report so he can share that with all of you. The Cooperative Research Program has also started a golden tilefish length monitoring program. And this is pilot research focused on testing the utility of onboard cameras to collect length data in the commercial golden tilefish fishery. And over 7,000 tilefish fork lengths were measured in 2025. And so this work will continue, and future analyses will quantitatively compare the length distributions generated by the camera systems simultaneously to those collected by observers and in the port sampling. Moving on to Northeast Trawl Advisory Panel, Hannah gave an excellent update. And 2 points that one point that I want to make is we are expecting the $3 million to support the regional industry-based trawl survey, but we have not yet received our full year allocation. So once those funds arrive at the Northeast Fisheries Science Center, we will transfer them to the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission and work to support phase 2 of Ribbit, similar to how phase 1 was supported. In terms of the observer program, we recognize that there have been challenges because of the Department of Homeland Security shutdown, which is impacting the U.S. Coast Guard. Some fishing vessels are running into challenges obtaining the required commercial fishing vessel safety exam and the U.S. Coast Guard safety decals, which are required to carry observers. And the Coast Guard and the regional office and the Science Center are trying to work through to resolve those issues when they arise. We are aware of them, but unfortunately, Department of Homeland Security is still shut down and Coast Guard operations are impacted. In terms of Northeast Fishery Observer Program, running well, about 80% of the standardized bycatch reporting methodology sampling is being completed. And then the biological port sampling program, which there has been a lot of interest, has transferred from the regional office to the Science Center. The contract was awarded to the vendor to provide those services in October. For the second quarter, which is January to March, 83% of the planned samples were collected. We have sort of the transition between Garfo and the Science Center is still underway through June 2026. And we are seeing the efficiencies that we were thinking that we would by having the vendor that's providing the biological port sampling program is the same vendor that is running the Northeast Fisheries Observer Program. So the benefits of having that through one contract are being realized, and we'll continue to report on that as we move forward. In terms of assessment updates, the Northeast Fisheries Science Center held a virtual community input meeting on March 18th for our assessments that are going to be held in 2027. We held a similar input meeting for the 2026 assessments last year. We had over 45 participants. It was a nice mix of folks, including commercial and recreational fishermen, academics, state government employees, council and commission staff, and we really do appreciate the input that we received. This input will then be used to inform the assessments that we're doing next year, which for the Mid-Atlantic Fisheries Management Council are the Atlantic mackerel, black sea bass, bluefish, scup, and summer flounder. The intent is that those assessments will also include the updated marine recreational information program data, the new recreational estimates. So that will be an important year for the council and for the science process. In terms of protected species, some good news on the North Atlantic right whale front. There were 23 mother-calf pairs sighted during this calving season. That's the highest number of calves since 2011. And so, the previous estimate of right whale abundance indicated the population is slowly growing, and 23 calves will certainly contribute to that population growth. A number of animals have been sighted in New England since February. Over 40 individuals documented in one survey in Cape Cod Bay. So the animals are back in the Northeast. There have been some recent mortalities. An entangled individual was found dead off of North Carolina, and a 3-year-old female was found dead in Virginia. So we're seeing more births, and we're still continuing to see deaths. And there are 3 known ongoing entanglements where we see the whales entangled but are not able to get a disentanglement team out to them. In terms of offshore wind, Hannah gave an update in the NTAP report. We are continuing to develop the Northeast Fisheries Science Center Survey Mitigation Program, working with offshore wind developers to come to an agreement for survey mitigation plans, and all of that is ongoing. And we're working with the Responsible Offshore Science Alliance on research coordination and involved in some of the projects. Ecosystem-based fisheries management update. The center delivered the State of the Ecosystem report to the Mid-Atlantic Council, and I believe that will be presented at the June meeting. The New England Council State of the Ecosystem report will be reported at this next week at their April meeting. We are working with both the Mid-Atlantic and New England to integrate the risk assessment to make sure that the New England Council's risk policy and the Mid-Atlantic Council's risk assessment are fully supported and integrated with the State of the Ecosystem report and with the ecosystem and socioeconomic profiles that are developed by the Science Center. So continuing to integrate, and build this ecosystem-based fisheries management in the region. In terms of the Changing Ecosystem and Fisheries Initiative, the modeling group continues to produce seasonal forecasts, and those forecasts are put on a website for people to look at. The next seasonal forecast will be available later in April. Those forecasts have indicated, if not a cooling in this region, at least a hiatus in the warming. And that is certainly what we are seeing in the region. And so there is skill in these forecasts. And I think there are some more science and management utility that we can make from these forecasts, now realizing that the skill is there in terms of thinking about what the environment's going to be in the future. And we are continuing Climate Vulnerability Assessment 2.0. That effort is ongoing. The first expert workshop was held on April 2nd, and the sensitivity scoring is underway. So there will be an update to the Climate Vulnerability Assessment, Northeast Climate Vulnerability Assessment, in the end of this year, early next year. And I think that is it for my report, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you. Questions for John? Chris, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you said cooperative research about 20 times, which is excellent, given our interest in cooperative research. But given our interest in cooperative research, one thing that I don't understand is how involved the Mid-Atlantic is in those summits. So I don't remember having a lot of Mid-Atlantic folks involved in the 2025 summit. And now you're talking about, the next one being in 2027. So I guess the question is, how do we get more involved? It'd be nice to get an invitation. Certainly, we notice that it's happening before it happens. All of that.
Thank you. I mean, it has been part of my reports, but there are a lot in my verbal report, so it probably gets missed. But I think, going forward, we can certainly send a formal announcement to to all three, Mid-Atlantic Council, Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission, and New England Council. That's an excellent suggestion. Thank you.
Thanks, Bobby.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just real quick to speak to that. They try to work the summit, so they do 1 year. They'll try to encompass the Mid-Atlantic. I think last year, year before, it was in Cape May, and then it was in Portland. This time it was in Riverhead, and I think the next one's going to be farther up. So they do try to bounce back and forth. But the team does a pretty good job as far as getting the word out. Unfortunately, the last couple of times we've had it, it's also coincided with council meetings. So there has been some scheduling issues, but they do try to encompass both Mid and New England in this.
Michelle Duvall.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And I did go to both the 2024 and 2025 cooperative research summits, just on my own. And I know Hannah was there at the one in Portland, I think last year in 2025. So, I mean, it is a great thing. And yeah, the one in Portland definitely coincided with the New England Council meeting, I think it was. So, but they're amazing. I mean, I've had an amazing time, both times that I've gone. I mean, John's staff, Anna Mercer, does a fantastic job arranging for outreach trips, going to actually, going to packing houses and, so that people can actually see, how the industry operates and what some of the challenges are.
Rich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks, John, for that update. You really piqued my interest with this golden tilefish commercial length sampling program. How far along is that? And could we? I mean, it's obvious it has some huge potential applications, for fishery sampling, both commercial and recreational. Honestly, is it possible that we could get a summary of that? I guess I'm asking is how far along is that project, and if it's near completion, maybe we can get a presentation. Thanks.
Yeah, it's not near completion yet. It is a pilot project. It's not in a commercial fishery, but there's a similar effort underway in the Atlantic cod recreational fishery, where Atlantic cod recreational fishers are similarly measuring their catch. And so we can sort of get a written summary to Chris to distribute to the council. And then when that project is finishing up, we can give a report out here.
Okay, I don't see any other hands. Thank you, John. We'll move on to NOAA General Counsel. And I'll go to John Almeida.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Pull up the document here. My update's going to be brief this time. Since our last meeting in the Cape Cod Charter Boat Association, you may recall this is a case that attempted to set aside a 2024 addendum, striped bass addendum, and the case was filed against the commission, all the states in the commission, and NIMFS. In November, the district court for the District of Columbia dismissed the action Subsequently, the plaintiffs have filed a notice of appeal to the DC Circuit, and the briefing will be happening this spring, with the plaintiff's opening brief due on April 27th. And, both sides will file briefs until, culminating in July when that briefing will be done, at which point there may or may not be oral argument on the case. In the Relentless case, this is the companion case to Loper Bright that challenged industry-funded monitoring program in the herring industry. You may recall this was originally brought in the District of Rhode Island, and after the Supreme Court's ruling, the case went back to the District of Rhode Island, where the parties filed briefs on the legal issues regarding industry-funded monitoring post-Loper Bright, where the Chevron doctrine has been overruled. The district court issued a ruling in favor of NIMFS, in which the court agreed that the Magnuson-Stevens Act authorizes the industry-funded monitoring provisions that were at issue in the case. The plaintiffs in that case filed an appeal to the First Circuit, and briefing is currently underway. The plaintiffs filed their opening brief. NIMFS has a brief due at the end of this month, and then the other side, the plaintiffs will get a second brief in May. And finally, in the New England Fishermen's Stewardship Association case, this is the challenge to the New England Council's Groundfish Framework 65. It was filed in the District of Maine, and this was another one of the appointments clause, constitutional appointments clause cases. You may recall that at the end of 2025 in December, the court issued a ruling in this case very similar to the decision that we got out of the Third Circuit in Lofstad. Lofstad was the case that the Mid-Atlantic's appointments clause case. And so the district court ruled very similar to the way the Third Circuit ruled. Since that time, this case has gone up on appeal to the First Circuit. The briefing has been completed and the court heard oral argument at the beginning of March. So at this point, we're just waiting on a decision in that case. That's all I have to report this time. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Let's see. Any questions on the Office of General Counsel report? Not seeing any now. Thank you. With that, we'll go to NOAA Office of Law Enforcement, Caleb Gilbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Great to be here today. Sorry it's been so long. I'm glad to come back and many familiar faces here. I was worried I'd come back and I might not know anyone, but I'm grateful for that. But if there's anyone here that I haven't met yet, feel free to introduce yourself. I'll try to do the same. Alternatively, if we have met and I'm forgetting, we can reintroduce each other like I did with Bobby yesterday. Sorry about that, Bobby. But yeah, so I don't anticipate trying to be at these meetings more than twice a year. But if folks need me more than that, please, by all means, if my presence is valuable at more than that capacity, then I'm happy to try to accommodate that. And I'm sort of picking my own meetings to attend. So if there's a particular meeting that folks feel that it's more helpful for me to be at than others, please, by all means, give me a little bit of notice, and I can make sure to make that happen. A couple details to share with the council today. So I'm going to sound like a broken record, but we're still in the process of updating our FY 2026 regional priorities. We're supposed to have that by next month, so hopefully by the next meeting I'll be able to report on that. The 4 assistant director positions I mentioned at the February meeting would post soon at different locations across the country, including our division, the Northeast Division, open, closed, and the leadership has now begun the hiring process for those positions. I'll continue to keep the council updated as I learn more. Our 2 NED patrol vessels are ready to go for the summer season, so I thought I'd mention that. Maybe Mike saw them. One of the boats getting pulled in and out of the parking lot, but that boat's all serviced and ready to go. Next, I'll cover a little of our trade enforcement work since the December meeting. So far in FY 2026, OLE and the NED has conducted a total of 52 trade monitoring patrols or operations. That was since October 1st of last year. We've conducted 19 new trade monitoring patrols or operations since the last council meeting in February. We conduct trade monitoring patrols and operations throughout our AOR. I probably mentioned that before, including our Great Lakes-based ports of entry, such as Chicago and even in Portland, Maine, such as patrol one of our D1 special agents conducted along U.S. Customs and Border Patrol at the International Marine Terminal IMSCIP, if I pronounced that right, in Portland on March 9th. Another trade enforcement activity I can mention today is that a Division II enforcement officer and special agent provided state JEA training to approximately 45 Virginia Marine police officers at the Virginia Marine Resources Commission headquarters in Hampton. I'm not sure exactly when that was, sometime over the winter. Our staff provided enforcement training related to domestic fisheries, IUU, SIMP, SASH, and HMS, and our ongoing trade enforcement casework continues. Moving on to our enforcement support of North Atlantic right whale conservation. It's good to hear the updated news on the calving recruitment. Happy to hear that. But starting with our efforts to deter gear entanglement, recently pulled our FY 2025 summary case processing data I can share with the council today. In FY 25, OLE handled a total of 54 take reduction plan focused cases as of March 19th last month. 9 of those remain open and 45 have been closed. More recently, a Division I enforcement officer closed a take reduction plan case after a NOVA penalty was issued to and paid by a Lobster Management Area 1 vessel owner operator found in violation of surface marking and wet stowage requirements. After his gear was inspected last June, part of one of the mid-range contracted patrols we conducted last year. Regarding our most recent take reduction patrol and compliance rate information, we have the first quarter FY 2025 data complete that I can share with the council today. So between October 1st, 2025 and December 31st of last year, OLE and our enforcement partners contributed to conducting take reduction plan focused patrols on 56 separate patrol days. So while Maine Marine Patrol, as usual, conducted the majority of these patrols, Rhode Island DEM enforcement, New Hampshire Fish and Game officers, and Maryland Natural Resource Police officers also contributed to those metrics. OLE officers participated in some of those patrols as well. Collectively, patrolling officers inspected gear from 249 different vessels on separate patrol days for an overall take reduction plan compliance rate of about 79%. We also included fish and conch trap gear inspections conducted by Rhode Island DEM enforcement and Maryland Natural Resource Police, which focused on take reduction plan and those statistics. Also related to our take reduction plan enforcement efforts, a few of us in NED met with members of the Northeast Fisheries Science Center's Cooperative Research Division, maybe it was 2 Fridays ago, to brainstorm next steps for the design and implementation of an offshore lobster electronic monitoring project that we hope to fund and help design. The purpose of the project is to investigate the feasibility of utilizing EM as a management enforcement tool in the Lobster Management Area 3 fishery that is, arguably inefficient to enforce using a contracted platform patrol vessel as we have in recent years. So any input folks have on that project, we're all ears. Regarding our efforts to encourage compliance with the speed rule, to help discourage large whale ship strike injury and mortality, a Division II special agent closed a speed rule case in late February with a NOVA penalty issued to a Florida-based recreational pleasure vessel owner related to speed rule focused patrols. I don't have a total number available that we've conducted so far in FY 2026, but our Summary total, including partnership with U.S. Coast Guard and JA partners on speed patrols in FY 2025 is a total of 14 speed rule focused patrols. Moving on, we also continue to send out VMS geofenced messages for right whale presence. This effort really helps encourage vessel awareness to alleviate the threat of both ship strike and gear entanglement. So just give you a quick summary of that effort. Globally, since we started it, since May 2022, we've sent 5,740 messages. FY25, we sent 3,247, and so far in this fiscal year, we've sent out 846 messages, I think in response to the observations recently mentioned by Dr. Hare. And moving on to our observer program support, our observer program liaison special agent presented at and participated in the most recent observer training held a couple of weeks ago. In addition, one of our D2EOs developed and coordinated an outreach event attended by commercial, charter, and recreational anglers in the Chincoteague area. She organized the event as a platform to discuss regulations and issues the local community was running into, such as related to observer program requirements. And we had representatives from the observer program, VMRC, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, U.S. Coast Guard, and local PD in attendance. And our observer program related casework continues, of course. One specific case I wanted to mention today began after our agents and officers uncovered a lucrative scheme devised by a New Jersey captain and seafood dealer to illegally harvest and sell excess scallops. The captain and dealer pleaded guilty after our staff's investigation determined that the fishermen routinely exceeded scallop landing limits on a clam vessel between October 2017 and April 2021 and sold the surplus to the dealer. The fisherman and dealer worked together to falsify the required fishing vessel trip and dealer reports mandated by law to cover up the overfishing. The web stories should publish soon on our headquarters website with more details. So please stay tuned. Or if anyone wants me to send them a note when it's out, I'm happy to do that. Shoot me an email. And I have no new closed blue line tilefish cases. Of course, I always look that up, just in case the council is aware. But no new closed cases to report on, but multiple cases are ongoing. And that's all I have to report, Mr. Chairman. Happy to take any questions folks might have.
Okay, any questions on the, go ahead, Rich Wong.
Thanks, Caleb. I'm just curious, how did you guys uncover this ring with the scallop, the undocumented scallop harvest? If the dealer was in cahoots with the captain, how did you guys figure this out? Thanks.
Started with a boarding and uncovered a concealed compartment. I think I'm allowed to say that. It's not fully reviewed but I'm writing a web story. That's close to final review. That's in there. So hopefully I won't get in trouble.
All right, now I'm not going to allow any more questions.
Not your fault.
All right, actually, I will look to see if there's any other hands. Not seeing any. I want to say it is good to see you in person. We appreciate the offer, and we'll certainly give thoughts as we're putting agendas together. This is a past example, but I think a good example, Caleb, would be the Surf, Clam, and Ocean Quahog workshop for species separation that OLE and you personally attended. Perhaps following a meeting like that, a council meeting following a workshop like that would be an excellent time to have you there in person. So great, thank you for the report. We will move on to the U.S. Coast Guard. I see Joshua Moen online, so we'll go over to you, Josh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you sound good.
Awesome. Caleb, I'm so sorry I couldn't be there for one where we could potentially have met in person, but glad you could make it. This is the brief report for the Coast Guard from February 1st to March 31st. Unfortunately, during this period, we only conducted one fisheries boarding. Boarding totals were impacted severely due to the 2 partial government shutdowns that prevented the Coast Guard from conducting boardings. As we're currently operating under a DHS funding lapse, we continue to not conduct fisheries boardings until there is a DHS funding bill that's been approved. For marine protected species summary, we do continue to execute our North Atlantic right whale operation to educate mariners and enforce the ship strike reduction rule. In fact, on the 9th of March, East District received a request from NOAA to support their efforts in Beaufort Inlet to request mariners transit slowly through the area due to 2 juvenile right whales swimming in the inlet. We contacted Sector North Carolina, and they launched a small boat that educated those mariners. That resulted in no strikes and the whales returning later to sea that evening. So far in February, we conducted 2 hail outs for a total of 9 so far during this Operation Right Speed. Our one boarding we did was on a commercial fishing vessel, and we do, despite the DHS funding lapse, continue to provide dock walks and training and education efforts for commercial fishing vessel safety and conduct commercial fishing vessel safety training. Pending any questions, that's all I have from the Coast Guard.
Okay, thank you for that. Let's see if there are any questions on the Coast Guard report. Skip, go ahead.
Hey, Josh, this is Skip Feller. I just wanted to thank y'all for not being affected with our inspections. Everything's been going along. We've had 2 or 3 inspections, and I'm happy that none of this shutdown has affected that stuff.
Me too, Skip. There are a couple limited things we're able to continue to do. Things for commercial fishing vessel safety. If there are any blatant or illegal things that people notice and happen to report to the Coast Guard, I'm able to brief that up and potentially get approval to investigate that and see what's going on. So I'm glad you're good to go, Skip.
All right, Josh, I don't see any other hands around the room, so appreciate the report. With that, we'll move into our last item, which is the liaison reports. I'm not sure if we have anything, but I'll look to Bobby as far as New England, if there's anything to report out.
Not currently, because the meeting is next week. So that's about all I have for that. And I just do want to say that I'm looking forward to meeting Caleb again for the 4th time. So maybe one of these days it'll actually stick.
Okay, thank you. And to the South Atlantic, I don't know if Sunny or Carrie, if you have anything.
I'm happy to give a super quick rundown on what happened at the last meeting, but I don't want to stand between people and their travel plans. So I'll just hit some highlights. For mackerel, we've heard some frustration for King and Spanish from the commission about how slow we're moving while we're waiting on some 2027 catch projections. And so based on that, our council has decided to convene the advisory panel in the fall and have a committee meeting after that and decide if we want to sort of move forward with some management measures that aren't tied to the catch projections we're waiting on. As you recall, we did a series of port meetings, and that if we do develop an amendment, that amendment would include issues we heard at the port meetings we did, including in this region. There's a dolphin MSE that's taking place. NOAA is conducting the MSE, and they were hoping to get management procedures from our council at the last meeting, but we did not feel comfortable providing them. As some of you know, Anna, certainly more than most, there can be some controversy around different states having different needs, and we didn't feel we were given ample time. So we're going to convene a meeting between now and then and come up with some thoughts on management procedures for future mahi actions. Real quick on snapper grouper species, we are developing an amendment to remove the snapper grouper commercial 2-for-1 permit and look at some trip limit changes, including step up and step down. So I want to thank you. That discussion you all had earlier this week about language around projections versus actual ACL has proved very helpful for me to look for pitfalls in the future. So thank you. Real quick, black sea bass, amendment 56, that is our amendment we're working on with, that's our assessment response amendment. Again, we're waiting on new projections using revised MRIP estimates In the meantime, because the numbers look not sporty, we have submitted Amendment 37 to take some interim measures, which include reducing the recreational trip limit from 7 fish to 2 fish, spawning season closures for both parts of the fishery, revised AMs, and yeah, those are the 3 things we're doing while we wait for new projections with the new MRIP estimates. And then we're going to be looking at removing some species from the snapper group or FMU, and in sort of this new spirit of trying to be more streamlined and to acknowledge the agency's limitations. We have 55 species, and as you can imagine, the chances of those being assessed and actually, being able to provide management for all those species is unrealistic. And then just the last 2 things we're working on is we have some spawning management zones that have been closed. They have a 10-year sunset. We're looking at renewing those for a future 10 years or unlimited. And we're considering changing retention limits for head boats for some snapper grouper species on a per 6 passenger basis, versus right now they have the same retention limits as the private recreational sector. So happy to answer any questions. There is a more detailed report in your briefing book.
Great, thank you. Any questions on the South Atlantic Fishery Management Council report? Okay. Nope, not seeing any. Thank you very much for that. With that, that wraps up agenda items, other than if there's any new business to come before the council. Mike Pentney?
I just have one quick item under other business, no action, but just for council's awareness. We're hearing from some fishermen, mostly in New England, mostly out of Massachusetts, that they're seeing increased catch of fluke, summer flounder, that are being discarded because they don't have summer flounder moratorium permits. And so the questions that's been raised is whether the council could consider developing an incidental, an open access incidental catch permit that would allow, some amount, 50 pounds or something of summer flounder retention by commercial vessels rather than discarding summer flounder. I've noted that this would require an action by both the council and the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission, Summer Flounder Board, and that the states need to be, heavily involved because of the implications for state permits and possession limits that are, that are designed to manage the state-by-state quotas. So I'm just flagging this issue. It may come up at a future Summer Flounder Board meeting, and wanted the council to be aware that we're hearing this as well.
Okay, thanks, Mike. I didn't see any other hands, but this is also the point in the agenda where we would take any general public comment. Okay, I do have one hand, Jim Hutchinson. Go ahead, Hutch.
Sorry, it took me a second. I know you guys are tapped out. I won't take very long with the question. Jim Hutchinson I'm the managing editor of the New Jersey Delaware Bay edition of the Fisherman Magazine. Just a point of clarification, going back to the discussion on recreational management measures for summer flounder, scup, and sea bass that Mike Louisi had brought up. Again, to clarify, the proposed rule has not actually been posted for public comment and approval. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And there's a public comment period associated with that. I think it's 30 days. Is that correct?
That's typical, although the public comment period can shift. Sometimes it's abbreviated to 15 days, depending on the issue.
Okay, well, this is a primary issue, 25 days from this day till the start of summer flounder season. So if this goes into a 30-day public comment period, my question to you folks is, what is my legal and regulatory message to share with New Jersey anglers and industry leaders regarding that? Because obviously with most of our summer flounder season is primarily inshore waters. But our federally permitted vessels are going to have to fish under the 3 at 18.5 inch size limit. Is that the message that I need to take back to our readers and advertisers?
Well, yeah, Jim, I'll take part of that, because I think It may be a little different from state to state. And so unless the regional administrator has anything else to add, I will say, reach out to me and we can work with you to ensure that we have everything New Jersey specific that's accurate for you.
Okay.
And we did have one other, unless there's anything else, Jim,
No, I guess that's it. I'll talk to you, Joe. Thank you.
of course. We do have one other hand, Eric Reed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually have a question for Dr. Hare on his presentation, if that would be all right. It's fairly brief.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, Dr. Hare, you mentioned the $3 million for the industry-based survey. Can you tell me how much, if any, the service is going to take all off the top before the rest of that money flows through to ASMFC?
We will take 0 off the top. The congressional direction was $3 million for a regional industry-based trawl survey.
Okay, thank you. That is the way I understand it, but okay. Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you. I don't see any other hands, so that does truly conclude the agenda. And with that, we'll wrap up here this week. I want to thank staff as always. Thank you to all the presenters. Thank you for all those in attendance. I think we had some great public comments that were extremely helpful. And of course, thank you to all the council members that were able to make it here in person and to be online. For those of you that are here, safe travels home. And that wraps up our April 2026 meeting. Thank you.